Welcome to Bedside History. Tonight's story is quiet. It is about a strange part of World War II. Not the guns, not the tanks, but the pills. In the middle of noise, there was silence. In the middle of war, drugs were given. Some gave energy. Some stopped pain. Some were meant to help. But many did harm. Before we begin, tell us where you're listening from. Tell us what time it is where you are. It's always nice to know who is falling asleep with us. If this video helps you rest, you can subscribe, but only if it truly helps. We are glad you're here. Now, lay back, get comfortable, and listen closely. The world was tired. The skies were dark. Smoke floated through cities. Boots marched across frozen ground. Ships moved through cold water. Planes hummed above the clouds. It was World War II, a war bigger than the one before. More countries joined. More lives were lost. The world was fighting everywhere. Europe, Africa, Asia, across the oceans. No place felt safe. Soldiers fought in deserts. They froze in the mountains. They drowned in jungles. They starved in trenches. Civilians were afraid. Cities were bombed. Homes were lost. Families were torn apart. At night, people hid in basements. They listened for sirens. They prayed for morning. But morning brought new fear. More battles, more hunger, more death. Soldiers were expected to fight, to obey, to endure, but the body is not made for endless war. It needs sleep, it needs rest, it needs peace. There was none, so commanders looked for something else, something stronger than sleep, stronger than food, something small, something quiet, a pill. Governments turned to science, to chemists, to doctors, to drug makers. They asked a question: what can help a soldier keep going? What can keep him awake? What can make him brave? What can take away fear? The answer came slowly, in labs, in secret rooms, through quiet deals. Drugs. At first, it was simple. A pill to stay awake. A pill to stop pain. A pill to lift mood. But soon it became more. Pills, more soldiers, more control. The world was changing. The human body was becoming a tool that could be shaped, changed, enhanced. This was the beginning, the first quiet stirrings of chemically enhanced war. The war spread quickly across the world, moving without hesitation or pause, taking no prisoners or mercy. Germany moved fast through the lands of Poland and France, with tanks rolling over fields and soldiers marching without rest. Flags changed overnight as armies advanced, cities fell, and people's lives were turned upside down. In the east, Russia watched carefully, preparing itself for the storm before moving its own forces to join the battle. In the west, Britain stood alone against the enemy's bombing raids that set London on fire, sending children away to safety while mothers waited in silence. Across the ocean, America waited quietly but soon was pulled into the conflict when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, turning the war truly global. The deserts of Africa became battlefields where soldiers faced burning heat, endless sand, and swarms of flies near their wounds. Asia was torn apart by war, with villages burned innocent, people suffering, and battles raging across vast landscapes. Countries from all over the world sent their sons to fight, including Australia, Canada, India, and even Brazil, making the war a fight for the whole planet. More than 60 countries joined the war effort, with over 100 million people serving in armies. Coming from farms, cities, and schools, each facing danger for the first time. Many of these soldiers were young boys, some still too young to understand what they would face. Yet they marched forward without fear. The war demanded everything from these men, pushing them beyond their limits without enough food, water, or rest to keep going. But the generals gave orders to march, to fight, to hold the line no matter the cost, with no time to stop and no chance to rest. Because of this, leaders began looking for new ways to help their soldiers, not just with more weapons or reinforcements, but by changing what was inside their minds and bodies. They asked if there was a way for a soldier to keep fighting without sleep, to march for days on end, to feel no fear, and to carry on even when broken inside. The human body had its limits, but perhaps, they thought, a pill could push those limits further than ever before. War is not only fought with guns and bombs, it is fought in the mind. Soldiers face fear that never leaves them. They see friends fall, they hear screams in the night. They wonder if they will live to see the morning sun. Loneliness creeps in. Memories stay like shadows. Sleep becomes impossible. Many soldiers suffered in silence. They did not talk about what they saw. They did not talk about what they felt. They carried heavy burdens inside, heavier than any backpack or weapon. Doctors called this shell shock. Later, it was called battle fatigue or combat stress. The mind could break from the horrors of war. Some soldiers could no longer fight. Some could no longer live. Leaders knew this was a problem. They wanted strong soldiers who could keep going. They wanted soldiers who would not feel fear. They wanted men who could work without stopping. But how? The answer was not in rest or comfort. There was no time for that. Instead, they turned to science, to chemistry, to drugs that could change the way a man felt. These drugs could give energy. They could quiet pain. They could dull fear. They could help a soldier forget the horrors for a little while. But these pills were not always kind. Some made soldiers jittery. Some made them unable to sleep. Some made them sick after the war. Still, the need was great. The war was too long. The nights were too dark. The days were too hard. So soldiers took the pills, some willingly, some without knowing what they were taking. And so began a new kind of war. A war fought inside the body, with chemicals, with pills, with the hope that a small tablet could hold back the weight of fear and exhaustion. Asterisk, the war was different. This time it was bigger, faster, more brutal. Armies needed more than soldiers. They needed machines, machines to kill, machines to carry loads, machines to march long distances. But soldiers were not machines. They had limits. They grew tired. They felt pain. They lost hope. Commanders wanted to fix this. They wanted men who could stay awake for days, men who could keep fighting without rest, men who would not feel hunger or fear. So they turned to medicine, not just to heal wounds, but to push the body beyond what it could do naturally. Drugs became tools of war, tools like guns or tanks. They were weapons to fight exhaustion, to fight pain, to fight fear. Different countries tried different things. Germany used one kind of drug to keep soldiers alert. Japan used another to help pilots fly long missions. The United States and Britain gave their troops stimulants to march longer and think faster. Some drugs helped soldiers focus. Some made them feel brave. Some dulled pain from injuries so they could keep fighting. But these drugs came with risks. Soldiers became dependent on them. Some had terrible side effects. Some drugs caused problems long after the war ended. Still, the promise was too strong. In a war where every second counted, commanders believed these pills could mean the difference between life and death. This was not just medicine, this was power. Power over the body, power over the mind, power to keep the war going. Asterisk, as the war moved forward, the use of drugs grew quietly. What started as small experiments became larger plans. Soldiers were given pills before long marches. Pilots took medicine before dangerous flights. Sometimes commanders gave drugs without telling the men what they were taking. These pills had names soldiers did not always know. Some were called stimulants. Others were painkillers. Some were new drugs made in secret labs. The goal was clear: make soldiers stronger, make them last longer, make them ready for battle. In Germany, soldiers took methamphetamine. It was called Pervitin. It gave energy. It stopped hunger. It made people feel awake for days. But it could also cause nervousness and strange behavior. In Japan, pilots took a different drug to stay alert during long missions over the Pacific. It helped them focus when they were tired, but it sometimes made them lose sleep for many nights after. The United States used benz. It was a popular stimulant that helped soldiers fight, sleep, and stay alert. It was given to troops, pilots, and even truck drivers. British soldiers also used Benzedrine, often called pep pills. They helped keep the men awake during long nights of battle. Painkillers were also common. Morphine was given to soldiers who were wounded. It eased pain, but could make men sleepy or confused. Some soldiers became addicted without meaning to. The use of these drugs was a secret to most people back home. Few knew how much medicine was being used on the front lines. But it changed the way soldiers fought. It changed the way they felt. It changed the war itself. This was a new kind of soldier, one who fought not just with weapons, but with pills. In the quiet, grey dawn of 1938 Germany, a new force was stirring, one that was not made of guns or tanks, but of science, chemicals, and whispered promises of endless energy. There was a small tablet called Pervitin, born in the laboratories of Berlin, designed to sharpen the mind, strengthen the body, and chase away the shadows of exhaustion that haunted every soldier and civilian in this restless nation. The world was changing fast, and so were the demands of war. Soldiers faced grueling marches through mud and rain, long hours standing watch under cold stars, and battles that stretched beyond the limits of human endurance. The old ways of rest and recovery were no longer enough. Something new was needed, a spark, a lightning strike to ignite the fire within, to push men beyond their usual strength, to carry them forward when their bodies begged to stop. Pervitin was that spark, a form of methamphetamine. It was first created in a small pill by German chemists working at Temler Work, a pharmaceutical company. At first, it seemed a miracle. Soldiers who took it could march for days without sleep, their minds razor sharp, their muscles pulsing with energy that felt almost unnatural. Fear was dulled, hunger was forgotten, and the endless strain of battle seemed to shrink beneath the power of the tablet. The German army quickly embraced Pervitin. It became known as the miracle drug, or the Stuka tablet, named after the swift dive bombers that screamed across the skies during lightning-fast Blitzkrieg attacks. The pill promised speed, focus, and relentless drive, perfect match for a war that depended on surprise, speed, and overwhelming force. Pervitin was handed out freely to soldiers heading into battle. Infantrymen swallowed pills before long marches through forests and across open fields. Tank crews popped tablets to stay alert during fierce armored clashes. Even Luftwaffe pilots took the drug to keep their eyes wide during dangerous bombing runs, soaring high above the earth, racing against death itself. For a time, the pill seemed unstoppable. Soldiers felt invincible, marching 70 hours straight, eyes wide and hearts pounding with the thrill of power. They were machines made of flesh, driven by chemistry, pushing beyond the limits of sleep and pain. But every miracle has its shadow. The crash came swiftly. When the pill's fierce energy faded, the body screamed for rest it never got. Confusion clouded the mind, hands trembled with unseen shakes, and nightmares bled into waking hours. Some soldiers broke down completely hallucinating, screaming or disappearing into the woods, lost to the ghosts that only they could see. Medical officers soon warned of addiction and mental collapse. Letters home grew darker, filled with fear and haunted words. Yet the war pressed on, and the pills kept coming. Millions were produced, poured into metal tins, and shipped to the front lines as a secret weapon in the fight for survival. Even the highest ranks were not immune. Adolf Hitler's personal doctor, Theodor Morell, gave the Führer injections containing methamphetamine, hoping to keep him alert during endless speeches and meetings. But the drug's toll was clear of him. The man who commanded millions could not escape its grip. The story of Pervitin is a story of power and pain, of lightning that blazes bright but burns fast. It is the story of men caught between duty and destruction, of a war that demanded more than bodies could give, and of a pill that promised victory but sometimes delivered silence instead. Now, as you rest your breath, let the echoes of that time drift softly away, carried on a gentle breeze of memory. The war has passed. The soldiers have found peace. The tablets lie quiet. The development of Pervitin began in 1938. German chemists worked quietly in their labs, searching for a way to give the nation's soldiers an edge. They created a tablet that was small and easy to carry, but powerful beyond anything seen before. It was a new kind of fuel for the human body, one that sparked energy without the need for sleep. At first, the soldiers did not know what to expect. The pill was handed out during training and early missions, a secret weapon hidden in plain sight. Those who took it felt a sudden rush. Fatigue slipped away like morning fog under the sun. Their minds grew sharp, able to focus on orders, enemies, and dangers with clear eyes. Their bodies moved faster, their steps lighter, their spirits lifted by the invisible power of the drug. This new energy came with a price few understood. As the days stretched into night and then into more days, the body's need for rest grew louder, but the pill kept pushing it forward. Soldiers marched for hours, often without eating or sleeping. They fought with a fierce, burning determination, driven by a chemical force they did not control. Pervitin was used most famously during the Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. German forces moved quickly across Poland and France, overwhelming their enemies with speed and surprise. The pill was part of this success. It gave soldiers the strength to keep going, the focus to stay alert, and the aggression to fight harder. Some historians say it was one of the hidden reasons behind Germany's early victories. Luftwaffe pilots, flying fast and dangerous missions, relied on Pervitin to stay awake during long flights. In cramped cockpits, high above the clouds, the drug kept their minds sharp and their hands steady. It helped them face the terrifying silence of the sky, the roar of engines, and the deadly threat of anti-aircraft fire. But the crash came harshly. After the drug wore off, soldiers felt exhausted, beyond measure. Sleep would not come easily. Some became addicted, unable to function without the tablets. The pressure to perform never stopped. But the pills could not save everyone. Diaries from German soldiers reveal the toll Pervitin took. Some wrote of feeling like machines, without rest or peace. Others told of the fear that grew inside, of nights filled with nightmares and trembling hands. They missed home, warmth, and simple comforts, but the war demanded more. Medical officers saw the effects too late. Reports warned of addiction, mental breakdowns, and dangerous side effects. Yet the supply of Pervitin only increased. Millions of tablets were made, sent to every corner of the battlefield, to keep the soldiers moving. The story of Pervitin is not just about war or drugs. It is about the human cost of pushing beyond limits. It is about the quiet voices lost beneath the noise of battle, the hidden battles inside minds and bodies, and the fragile line between power and destruction. Now, as you listen softly, imagine the world moving fast, full of soldiers chasing a dream of victory. Let the gentle calm of this moment wash over you. Rest easy, for the storm of war has passed. The long hours filled with action, fear, and relentless movement tested the limits of every soldier's body. The energy from Pervitin helped them push beyond normal strength, but it also masked pain and exhaustion. Men who might have rested were driven forward by the tablet's power. This created a cycle, fast bursts of energy, followed by deep crashes of fatigue. The body cried out for rest, but the pill quieted that voice. Not all soldiers welcomed this change. Some felt a loss of control. Their minds became restless, jittery, or confused. The burst of energy sometimes turned into bursts of anger or anxiety. The pill gave strength, but it also brought shadows. Soldiers had to balance the sharp clarity with the hidden cost of mental strain. As the war stretched on, German commanders noticed the effects on their troops. Some units showed signs of wear faster than others. Reports came back from the front lines, describing soldiers who pushed too hard, who collapsed suddenly, or who became unpredictable. The addiction to Pervitin was a secret, but one that spread quietly among the ranks. The stories from the men themselves reveal both gratitude and regret. Some said the pill saved them from giving up, especially during harsh conditions with little sleep or food. Others described feeling trapped, unable to stop taking the drug even when it harmed them. The mixture of relief and danger made a complex part of their experience. As years passed, the drug's effects became harder to hide. German military doctors began to warn about the dangers. But the pressure to keep fighting, to keep the war machine moving, was stronger than caution. Millions more tablets were produced, sent out with orders to continue the Blitzkrieg's rapid pace. This push for speed and power changed the nature of warfare. Chemical aid became a hidden weapon, used to reshape soldiers into engines of battle. It blurred the lines between human endurance and machine-like effort. Pervitin was both a tool of strength and a source of suffering. The story of Pervitin is a reminder of the costs that come with the search for power. It shows how even small pills can shape history, and how the quest to win can push people beyond their limits, both seen and unseen. During the final years of World War II, Adolf Hitler was not just the leader of Nazi Germany. He was also a patient under the care of Dr. Theodor Morell. Morell was Hitler's private physician, a man who held great influence over the Führer's daily life through his unusual medical treatments. Morell's approach was not like a typical doctor's. He gave Hitler a steady stream of injections, pills, and potions, claiming to boost his health and energy. These treatments became part of Hitler's daily routine, carried out faithfully in his private quarters. Morell's influence was profound because Hitler trusted him deeply, even as many other advisors grew concerned. This trust gave Morell a unique role during a critical time when Germany was facing defeat. Morell's treatments promised strength and vitality, but often masked the underlying decline of Hitler's body and mind. Behind the scenes, Morell's cocktail of drugs quietly shaped the man whose decisions affected millions of lives. By the early 1940s, Hitler's health was visibly failing. He suffered from many problems, including digestive issues, tremors, exhaustion, and severe headaches. His weight fluctuated, and he often appeared pale and weak. Despite this, he pushed himself hard, attending long meetings and giving fiery speeches. His body, however, was struggling under the strain of constant stress and illness. Dr. Morell tried to treat these problems with a steady supply of medicines, hoping to keep Hitler functioning, but the treatments were sometimes more harmful than helpful. The drugs masked symptoms without curing the root causes, letting Hitler feel temporarily stronger but hiding the real damage. His physical health slipped quietly while his mental state grew unstable. Those close to him noticed his increasing irritability, mood swings, and paranoia. His need for Morell's medicines grew, deepening the reliance on the doctor's treatments. The man who once appeared strong was becoming fragile, caught in a cycle of sickness and drug use. Dr. Morell's medical cabinet was full of many different drugs. The treatments included methamphetamines, which boosted energy and alertness, but could cause addiction and mood swings. Hitler also received opiates for pain relief and to calm nerves, but these drugs carried risks of dependence. Hormones were part of the mix, meant to balance body functions, though their effects were not always clear. Tranquilizers helped reduce anxiety and sleeplessness, offering brief moments of calm. The combination was powerful but unpredictable. Some days the drugs gave Hitler bursts of strength, sharp focus, and energy to lead. Other days they brought confusion, paranoia, and physical weakness. The doses changed often, sometimes increased without clear reason. This patchwork of medications masked symptoms but did not heal. Over time, the effects on Hitler's body and mind grew more severe. His dependence on Morell's cocktail became a hidden war, fought inside his own system. The drugs Hitler took affected his mind in deep ways. At times, methamphetamines gave him bursts of energy and confidence, making him speak with urgency and boldness. But these highs were often followed by crashes that left him tired, irritable, and confused. The opiates dulled pain but could cloud his judgment, slowing his reactions or making him withdrawn. Hormones may have unsettled his moods, causing sudden shifts from calm to anger. Tranquilizers helped with anxiety, but sometimes left him groggy or disconnected. Over months and years, these changing states grew more intense. Paranoia took root, making Hitler suspicious of friends and enemies alike. He saw threats everywhere, which affected his decisions as leader. Some historians believe these drugs worsened his mental state during crucial moments of the war. The cocktail of medications did not cure him, it shaped his behavior, feeding fear and doubt alongside moments of false strength. The drugs Adolf Hitler took each day affected his mind in many deep ways. Methamphetamines gave him bursts of energy, making him feel confident, powerful, and full of urgency. He could speak quickly, make bold promises, and show strong enthusiasm. But these energetic highs never lasted long. Soon after, he would crash feeling tired, weak, and often irritable. His mood could change quickly from excitement to frustration. The opiates he took helped dull pain from his many health problems, but they also clouded his thinking. Sometimes, they made him slow to react, or less interested in what was happening around him. Hormones, which were part of his treatments, may have caused strange mood swings. He could go from calm to angry without warning. Tranquilizers were used to ease his anxiety, helping him relax before speeches or meetings. But these drugs sometimes left him groggy, unfocused, or disconnected from reality. Over the years, this mixture of drugs created a dangerous balance. At times, Hitler seemed full of energy and determination. At other times, he was weak, confused, and unable to think clearly. His moods became unpredictable, making it hard for those around him to understand his state of mind. Paranoia grew stronger, feeding his fears that people were plotting against him. He became suspicious of friends, advisors, and even close allies. This growing mistrust shaped many of his decisions. He often believed the worst, seeing enemies everywhere, which led to harsh orders and irrational actions. Some historians argue that the drugs did not just affect his health, but changed the course of history. They suggest that the drug cocktail may have worsened his mental state during key moments in the war, leading to poor choices that hurt Germany's chances. Instead of helping him, the medications created a cycle of false strength, followed by deep weakness. The effects on mood, paranoia, and decision-making reveal how the hidden war inside Hitler's body mirrored the chaos of the world around him. Modern historians and medical experts have studied Hitler's drug use to better understand how it affected his mind. They look at the records of Dr. Morrell, the medications given, and the timing of Hitler's behavior changes. Many believe that the powerful mix of methamphetamines, opiates, hormones, and tranquilizers caused serious damage to his brain. Over time, these drugs can create a state called drug-induced psychosis, a condition where a person loses touch with reality, experiences hallucinations, intense paranoia, and irrational thinking. Some experts say that Hitler's increasing paranoia, erratic decisions, and sudden mood swings were symptoms of this condition. The drugs may have worsened his natural tendencies, making him more dangerous and unstable. The constant use of stimulants followed by depressants created highs and lows that confused his sense of time, space, and trust. He could believe false ideas with strong conviction or act violently against imagined enemies. There is no clear way to know exactly how much the drugs changed Hitler's mind, but many agree that the effects of this hidden pharmaceutical war within him played a role in the collapse of his leadership. Some suggest that if he had not been dependent on these substances, the final years of the war might have looked very different. This understanding helps us see how chemical forces can shape history. It is a reminder that behind great events, sometimes unseen battles rage within people's bodies. The story of Hitler and Dr. Morrell shows how medicine can be both a tool for healing and a weapon that changes the course of a nation. Asterisk. In the muddy fields and dark trenches of World War II, pain was everywhere. Soldiers were hurt, bleeding, and scared. To help them, medics used a powerful drug called morphine. Morphine could stop pain fast. It helped soldiers feel numb to their wounds. Morphine was stored in small tubes called serene. These were easy to carry and quick to use. Medics could give a dose fast with a simple jab. The serette looked like a small metal tube with a needle hidden inside. It was made to be used once and then thrown away. This made it safer and cleaner in the messy hospitals and battlefields. The design of the serette helped medics save many lives. They could carry many serettes in their bags. When a soldier cried out in pain, medics gave morphine quickly. The drug worked fast, easing the worst hurts with gentle power. The serette was a small, simple tool, but it made a big difference. It helped medics bring calm in the chaos of war. Asterisk field medics were the quiet, tireless heroes of the battlefields. They moved through the chaos of war through smoke, noise, and the cries of wounded soldiers, focused on their vital task. Their job was to locate those who had been hurt, provide immediate first aid, and do everything possible to keep them alive long enough to reach a proper hospital. Each medic carried a heavy bag filled with bandages, surgical tools, antiseptics, and small devices called morphine serettes. These serettes were tiny auto-injectors, carefully designed to deliver morphine quickly and safely. Medics were trained to use these tools with great care, knowing that morphine could bring much needed relief from pain, but could also be dangerous if misused. The work of field medics was never easy. They often found themselves in the middle of battle, with bullets flying and explosions shaking the ground. They had to move fast, sometimes having only seconds to decide what treatment to give before the fighting moved on or the area became too dangerous. Yet, despite the risks, they stayed close to the front lines, willing to put themselves in harm's way to save others. Medics offered more than just medical help. Their presence brought comfort in moments of despair, when a soldier felt the sharp, unbearable pain of a wound. The medic's gentle touch and the morphine's numbness could soften not only the body, but also the fear and loneliness that often came with injury. Without these brave medics, many more soldiers would have faced the war's hardships without help. Their quick actions and compassionate care were a small beacon of hope amid the destruction. A reminder that even in war, there was kindness and courage working quietly behind the scenes. Asterisk morphine was a powerful tool in the hands of field medics. During World War II, it was stored in small, easy-to-use devices called auto-injectors or serettes. These allowed medics to give wounded soldiers quick relief right on the battlefield. The serette was light and could be carried in a pocket or first aid kit. When a soldier was in pain, the medic would press the device against the skin and inject the morphine fluid. This quick action helped calm sharp injuries, broken bones, and burning pain from wounds. It was a small miracle in a world of chaos. Medics knew morphine could save lives by easing suffering fast, but they also had to be careful. Too much morphine could slow breathing or cause overdose. This meant every dose needed careful thought and skill. Field medics worked hard to balance the fine line between giving enough morphine for relief and not too much to cause harm. Their knowledge and quick decisions saved many from unbearable pain and gave them a chance to survive until they could reach better medical care. Asterisk. Field medics played a vital role in caring for wounded soldiers on the front lines. They were often the first to arrive after an injury, working quickly to stop bleeding, clean wounds, and ease pain. Morphine was one of their most important tools. Medics carried morphine serettes with them at all times, ready to give soldiers fast relief. Their job was difficult and often dangerous, moving through battlefields under fire. They had to stay calm while treating pain that was deep and raw. The medic's skill in using morphine helped many men survive long enough to reach field hospitals or safer places. Beyond pain relief, morphine also brought moments of peace to soldiers trapped in the nightmare of war. Medics knew the power of this drug, but they also faced hard choices. Giving too little morphine meant the soldiers suffered greatly. Too much risked harm or overdose. Still, these quiet heroes balanced this fine line with courage and care, offering a gentle escape from pain even in the darkest hours. The fine line between relief and overdose was one of the biggest challenges faced by medics and doctors during the war. Morphine was a powerful medicine that could ease the sharpest pain quickly, but it was also dangerous if given too much or too often. On the battlefield, conditions were harsh, chaotic, and fast-moving. Medics had to make quick decisions about how much morphine to give a wounded soldier. If they gave too little, the soldier's pain could become unbearable, causing shock or even death. If they gave too much, the soldier could stop breathing or fall into a deep coma. In some cases, this balance was almost impossible to keep. The strain of war, combined with limited supplies and lack of detailed training, meant mistakes sometimes happened. Some soldiers were saved by morphine injections, while others suffered from accidental overdoses. Medics worked under extreme pressure, trying to keep this balance with as much care as possible. This struggle showed how complex pain relief was during the war. A fight not only against injury, but also against the risks of the medicine itself. The fine line between easing suffering and causing harm was a daily reality in the trenches. Hospitals and ambulances that moved across battlefields. After the war, many veterans faced a new, quiet battle one with addiction. Morphine, once a life-saving medicine on the battlefield, had left its mark on countless soldiers. What started as a necessary treatment for unbearable wounds often turned into a deep dependence. Soldiers who had received morphine injections during combat found it hard to stop using the drug once they returned home. For some, the relief morphine brought was like a gentle escape from not only physical pain, but also the heavy memories of war. Yet, the drug's powerful hold made it difficult to break free. Many veterans struggled with cravings, withdrawal symptoms, and the shame that came with addiction. The medical system at the time was not fully prepared to deal with this new challenge. Addiction was poorly understood, and support was limited. Some veterans hid their dependence, fearing judgment or loss of benefits. Others found themselves trapped in cycles of use that affected their health, families, and futures. This silent suffering was a hidden cost of war, one that stayed long after the fighting ended. Morphine's legacy was not just in healing wounds, but in the ongoing fight against addiction that followed many home from the battlefield. It was a reminder that the pain of war went far beyond the visible scars, touching lives in ways few could see or speak about openly. The widespread use of morphine during the war and the rise in addiction among veterans forced governments to rethink their medical policies. After the fighting stopped, authorities faced the difficult reality that many soldiers were still battling drug dependence. This pushed policymakers to consider new rules on how morphine and other strong painkillers should be prescribed, distributed, and monitored. In some countries, the war revealed gaps in the healthcare system, showing that care for wounded veterans needed to include support for addiction and mental health. Hospitals began to develop special programs to help those struggling with morphine dependence, although these efforts were slow and uneven. The war's harsh lessons led to stronger controls on narcotics and better training for doctors on addiction risks. Veterans' hospitals became places not only for physical healing but also for treating drug-related problems. Over time, governments increased funding for research into safer pain treatments and addiction therapies. Morphine's legacy influenced how medicines were handled in both military and civilian settings for decades to come. It also helped spark early conversations about the importance of mental health care alongside physical recovery. The policies shaped by these experiences laid the groundwork for modern approaches to pain management and addiction treatment. The shadow cast by morphine during World War II became a catalyst for change in healthcare systems worldwide, marking a new chapter in how societies care for those who suffer the hidden wounds of war. As news spread that German soldiers were using pills to fight fatigue, Britain and the United States began to explore similar options. Scientists and doctors worked quickly to find safe ways to help their troops endure the long, hard battles. Ahead, Benzedrine, a type of amphetamine, had already been used for medical reasons like asthma and nasal congestion, but its stimulating effects caught the attention of military leaders. By the early 1940s, Benzedrine was included in the rations issued to British and American soldiers, sailors, and airmen. It became known as a pep pill, a small tablet that could give a boost of energy and alertness when the body was exhausted. For the Allies, adopting Benzedrine was a way to keep their forces strong and ready. The pill was easy to carry and use, which made it perfect for soldiers facing long, difficult missions. In Britain, the Royal Air Force began giving Benzedrine to pilots who flew dangerous bombing missions at night. These flights required extreme focus and endurance. The drug helped them stay awake and alert during hours of intense flying. Across the Atlantic, the United States military quickly followed suit, issuing Benzedrine to troops in various branches of the armed forces. The goal was to help soldiers push beyond normal limits and maintain their strength on the battlefield. This new use of amphetamines marked a shift in how the military thought about medicine. It was no longer just about healing wounds, but about enhancing human performance. The pill became a secret weapon, quietly changing the way war was fought. Benzedrine quickly showed its power to sharpen focus and fight fatigue. Soldiers who took the pill found their minds clearer, their bodies less tired. Long marches, endless watch shifts, and sleepless nights felt easier to bear. The pill gave a sense of energy that seemed to come from nowhere. It helped soldiers stay alert when every second counted. For pilots in the Royal Air Force and the US Army Air Forces, Benzedrine was a lifeline during long flights. They needed to concentrate on flying through darkness, avoiding enemy fire, and completing dangerous bombing runs. The pill helped keep their eyes open and their reflexes sharp. It also gave a boost to morale. Feeling stronger and more awake gave soldiers hope and confidence, even in the hardest moments. But the effects were not all positive. While Benzedrine masked tiredness, it did not replace sleep or rest. After the drug wore off, some soldiers felt worse than before. The crash could bring exhaustion, confusion, or mood swings. Over time, some became dependent on the pill to face the daily grind of war. Despite these risks, many troops welcomed the temporary relief. Benzedrine became part of the soldier's routine, a quiet ally in a brutal fight. The boost it gave was real, and in the chaos of war, that small advantage mattered more than anything. Asterisk night missions were some of the most dangerous assignments during World War II. Pilots and crew flew through darkness, clouds, and enemy fire. They faced exhaustion, cold, and fear. Staying awake and alert was vital for survival. Benzedrine became a common tool for bomber crews to meet these challenges. Bomber pilots took the pills before long flights that could last many hours. The drug helped them resist sleepiness, sharpen their focus, and maintain quick reflexes. Navigators, gunners, and radio operators also used Benzedrine to stay attentive during tense moments. Every crew member needed to be alert to danger at all times. The drug helped reduce fatigue during repeated missions. Sometimes crews flew night after night with little rest. Benzedrine gave them a way to push through the physical and mental strain. It was a secret weapon that kept many alive, but using Benzedrine came with costs. Some crew members felt jittery or anxious. Others found it hard to sleep after the mission ended. Medical officers warned about overuse and the risks of addiction. Still, the pill's immediate benefits often outweighed those concerns in the eyes of many soldiers in the skies over Europe. Benzedrine became known as a go. It was a small, powerful aid that helped bomber crews face the endless night with steady nerves and sharp minds. While Benzedrine helped soldiers stay awake and focused, medical officers quickly noticed some troubling effects. They warned that the drug was not without risks. Using Benzedrine too often or in large amounts could lead to serious problems. Some soldiers experienced anxiety, irritability, and mood swings after taking the pills. Others had trouble sleeping once the drug wore off. Medical staff saw cases of heart palpitations and high blood pressure linked to amphetamine use. These side effects worried doctors who cared for the troops. Addiction was another concern. Benzedrine could create dependence. Soldiers might start to rely on the pill just to function through long days and nights. Medical officers feared this would harm soldiers in the long run, both physically and mentally. Despite these warnings, the pressures of war often pushed commanders and soldiers to continue using Benzedrine. The immediate need for alertness and endurance overshadowed the long-term dangers. Some military doctors tried to educate troops about proper use, but wartime urgency made strict control difficult. Still, the voices of caution were important. They helped shape later military policies about drug use. Medical officers understood that these pills were tools, not cures, and needed careful handling to protect the health of those who served. After the war ended, many veterans returned home, carrying more than just memories of battle. Some still struggled with fatigue, pain, and mental exhaustion. For these men and women, Benzedrine did not disappear from their lives overnight. Instead, it found a place in post-war medicine. Doctors prescribed Benzedrine to help veterans cope with tiredness and depression. The drug was seen as a way to lift spirits and improve focus. In hospitals and clinics, it was sometimes given to treat conditions like narcolepsy or severe fatigue that could not be explained easily, however. The risks known during the war did not always stop doctors from using amphetamines. Some veterans became dependent on these pills, facing a new battle with addiction once the war was over. Medical professionals began to recognize the need for careful management, but understanding was limited. The use of Benzedrine in civilian medicine grew. In the 1950s, sometimes without clear guidelines, it was sold under various brand names as a stimulant, diet aid, or mood enhancer. The legacy of its military use lingered in both helpful and harmful ways. This chapter's story shows how a drug meant to boost soldiers' strength became part of a wider medical challenge. It reminds us how war changes lives long after the last gunshot fades. While Benzedrine brought clear benefits on the battlefield, many medical officers also saw its darker side. They noticed that soldiers sometimes became restless, anxious, or irritable after taking the pills. In some cases, the drug caused soldiers to push beyond their limits, risking serious health problems. Doctors warned that repeated use could lead to addiction. They saw men experience crashes after the drug war of deep tiredness, depression, and confusion. Some soldiers ignored these signs, driven by duty or orders. But medical officers knew the dangers were real. Despite these warnings, Ben's use continued. The urgent needs of war often outweighed concerns about long-term health. Medical teams balanced care and control, trying to protect soldiers while keeping armies strong. These early warnings shaped future military medicine. They planted the idea that drugs must be handled carefully, with respect for both power and risk. This balance remains important in modern armed forces. The Soviet Union faced one of the harshest battles of World War II on the Eastern Front. Soldiers fought in freezing cold, mud, and endless stretches of forest. Their enemy was not only the German army, but also the brutal weather and hunger. Unlike the West, Soviet leaders had fewer resources to give their troops special drugs or advanced medicines. Instead, they relied heavily on the strength, willpower, and endurance of their soldiers. Soviet military culture valued toughness above all else. Soldiers were expected to endure pain, fatigue, and hunger without complaint. Commanders pushed men hard, often with harsh discipline. The idea was simple. Victory would come through sheer force of spirit and determination. Pharmaceutical support was limited. Soviet doctors did what they could with basic supplies, but chemical aids were rare. Instead, soldiers learned to rely on simple methods, rest when possible, sharing food and warmth, and encouraging each other through difficult times. The bond between comrades became a key source of strength. This resilience became a defining feature of the Soviet war effort. It helped troops survive long marches, fierce battles, and freezing winters. But it also came at a cost. Without advanced medicine or stimulants, exhaustion often went untreated, leading to breakdowns and deaths that might have been avoided. Despite these challenges, Soviet soldiers fought on with remarkable endurance. Their toughness helped turn the tide in many battles. It showed a different side of War I, where mental strength and community were as important as any pill or injection. Though the Soviet Union lacked access to the more advanced amphetamines used by Germany, Britain, and the United States, it still used simpler stimulants to help soldiers keep going in brutal conditions. One of the main substances was phenamine, a mild stimulant related to amphetamines. It was less powerful but easier to produce with limited resources. Phenamine helped soldiers fight off fatigue and stay alert during long marches or battles. It gave them a small boost of energy when their bodies were worn down by cold, hunger, and constant danger. In many ways, it was a practical choice. The drug was simple, cheap, and didn't require complex manufacturing or supply chains. Herbal stimulants also played a role. Soldiers often used traditional plants known to increase stamina or reduce tiredness. These natural remedies had been part of Russian folk medicine for centuries. Soldiers chewed roots, brewed teas, or smoked herbs to help them through the worst days. Medical officers issued these stimulants carefully. They knew the dangers of overuse, but also understood that the harsh front lines demanded every possible advantage. These drugs weren't meant to create super soldiers, but to help ordinary men survive extraordinary challenges. Despite their limitations, these simpler stimulants were vital. They helped the Soviet army maintain pressure against the enemy. pushing through exhaustion and hardship. They showed how necessity shaped the Soviet approach, making do with what was available, finding strength in simplicity and always moving forward. Asterisk, in the harsh and frozen battlefields of the Eastern Front, alcohol became more than just a drink. It became a way for soldiers to cope with fear, pain, and exhaustion. The Soviet troops often faced brutal cold, hunger, and endless danger. For many, a small amount of vodka or other spirits was a brief escape from the harsh reality around them. Alcohol was sometimes officially distributed by commanders. A small ration of vodka could calm nerves before a difficult battle or help soldiers endure the freezing temperatures. It was seen as a morale booster and a tool to steady shaky hands or quiet anxious minds. But alcohol also came with risks. Drinking too much could weaken a soldier's body, slow reactions, and lead to accidents or poor decisions. Yet, in moments of despair or loneliness, many soldiers reached for the bottle to find a little warmth or courage. Beyond the battlefield, alcohol served a social role. It helped soldiers bond, share stories, and find moments of normalcy amid chaos. These brief moments of camaraderie gave strength to keep going. The use of alcohol showed how, in the Soviet army, coping with war was not just about drugs or weapons, but also about managing emotions and mental health. When other stimulants were scarce, vodka was often the only comfort available. Asterisk, the Soviet Union's approach to war was shaped by history, ideology, and culture. Unlike Germany or the Western Allies, the Soviets relied less on complex pharmaceuticals to push soldiers forward. Instead, simpler stimulants, hard work, discipline, and sheer willpower were valued more. This was partly because Soviet military medicine had fewer resources and less access to the newest drugs. But it was also tied to a cultural belief in endurance and sacrifice. Soldiers were expected to bear hardships without complaint, relying on strength of spirit rather than chemical help. In Western armies, amphetamines were widely accepted as tools to improve focus and stamina. The German Blitzkrieg and later British and American forces openly used these drugs to enhance performance. This acceptance came with medical support, warnings, and monitoring. In contrast, the Soviet system was more cautious and conservative about pharmaceutical use. When stimulants were used, they were often older, simpler compounds or traditional herbal remedies. Alcohol, as mentioned before, played a larger role in coping with stress. This difference in drug reliance reflected broader contrasts between Soviet and Western military culture, where Western armies embraced science and technology in warfare. Soviet forces emphasized endurance, loyalty, and ideological commitment. These cultural views influenced how soldiers experienced war. Soviet troops faced extreme hardship with fewer chemical aids, but carried a powerful sense of collective purpose. This shaped their resilience, suffering, and survival in unique ways. Asterisk, on the Eastern Front, soldiers faced harsh winters, hunger, and exhaustion. Supplies were often low. Medicines and stimulants were hard to get. Bombed factories, broken roads, and snowy railways made it difficult to bring help. Many soldiers had only simple herbs or alcohol to keep going. Without strong drugs, they relied on their own strength and spirit. This made the war feel even colder and harder. Yet, despite the scarcity, the soldiers stayed strong, fighting with willpower and hope even when supplies ran low. This struggle shaped their bodies, minds, and hearts during the long, difficult war. Now we step into the field hospitals and trenches, where pain met its match in morphine. This chapter follows the gentle plunge into numbness that this drug provided. Used to ease suffering, it also brought dependence and silence to millions of wounded men. How morphine was stored in auto-injectors during the war. Quick access to pain relief was crucial. Morphine was often stored in small, easy-to-use containers called auto-injectors or syrettes. These were tiny tubes with a needle hidden inside, ready to deliver a precise dose of morphine in seconds. Medics carried these on their belts or in their bags so they could give pain relief quickly, even in the middle of battle. Soldiers who were wounded could receive morphine without delay, which helped calm severe pain almost immediately. This new technology saved many lives by easing shock and making surgery possible on the battlefield. The design of syrettes was simple, so medics needed only little training to use them correctly. This quick method of delivery was vital, especially when doctors were scarce or the wounded had to wait hours to reach a field hospital. The small size also meant that many could be carried in a pocket, ready for emergencies. Morphine syrettes became a standard tool in many armies, a symbol of both relief and the heavy cost of war. Field medics and their role field medics were the first to care for wounded soldiers. These men and women worked under extreme pressure, often risking their own lives to reach the injured. Their job was to give immediate first aid, stop bleeding, prevent infections, and manage pain until the wounded could be moved to a hospital. Morphine was one of their most important tools. Medics learned to recognize when morphine was needed, giving just enough to ease pain but not too much to cause harm. The job required quick judgment and calm nerves. Sometimes medics had to carry soldiers through shellfire to safety, all while monitoring their breathing and pulse after giving morphine. They also had to watch for signs of overdose, as too much morphine could slow breathing dangerously. Field medics were often unsung heroes, providing comfort amid chaos. Their care helped save thousands of lives, and their use of morphine was a key part of this. The fine line between relief and overdose morphine was powerful, but it came with risks. Giving too little left soldiers in pain. Too much could cause serious problems. Morphine slows the nervous system, which can lead to shallow breathing, loss of consciousness, or even death in overdose cases. On the battlefield, medics faced this fine line daily. They had to judge how much morphine to give without the usual hospital equipment. This was hard, because every soldier's pain tolerance and body reacted differently. Many soldiers received multiple doses over time, increasing the risk of overdose. Some medics became experts at spotting early signs of trouble, like slow breathing or blue lips. Despite their best efforts, accidental overdoses did happen, sometimes with tragic results. This delicate balance made morphine use a constant challenge, forcing medics to stay alert and cautious. The dangers of overdose also highlighted the need for better training and more careful monitoring in hospitals after the war. Long-term addiction among veterans after the war. Many veterans struggled with more than physical wounds. Morphine had helped them survive the battlefield, but for some, it created a new battle inside their bodies. Long-term addiction became a widespread problem. Soldiers who had been given morphine in high doses or for long periods found themselves unable to stop. Their bodies had grown dependent on the drug to function normally. This addiction was often hidden or misunderstood at the time. Many veterans faced shame or silence, fearing judgment or loss of respect. Addiction affected their families, work, and health. Some veterans tried to hide their dependence, while others sought help from doctors who were often unprepared to treat them. The long-term effects of morphine addiction raised awareness about the hidden costs of war. It also pushed society to think differently about drug dependence, moving from punishment to treatment and support. Morphine's effect on post-war policy. The widespread use of morphine and the rise in addiction forced governments to change their medical policies. After the fighting stopped, authorities had to face the reality that many soldiers were still struggling with drug dependence. This led to new rules on how morphine and other strong painkillers should be prescribed, distributed, and monitored. The war revealed weaknesses in healthcare systems, showing that care for veterans needed to include addiction, support, and mental health services. Special hospitals and programs were created to help those fighting dependence. These efforts were slow, but marked the start of a new approach to veteran care. Doctors received better training on the risks of addiction. Policies on narcotics tightened in both military and civilian medicine. Morphine's legacy shaped pain management practices for decades. The war's lessons also influenced research into safer drugs and addiction treatment. Veterans' hospitals became places not only for physical healing but for mental health and addiction recovery. Morphine's story is one of relief, risk, and lasting change in how we care for those wounded in body and mind. The war was not only fought on battlefields far away. At home, civilians faced a different kind of battle every night. The sounds of bombs falling, sirens wailing, and planes flying overhead kept many awake for hours. Cities were darkened with blackout curtains to hide from enemy planes. Families lived with fear, hunger, and worry. These stresses made sleep hard to find. People tried many ways to quiet their minds and bodies. Some turned to quiet rituals like soft music, reading, or prayer. Others found sleep came only in short, broken bursts. Anxiety filled the night as families waited for news from the front or feared the next air raid. Sleep was a precious escape. Without it, people felt more tired and less able to cope with the daily struggles. Yet, the war made peaceful nights rare. Even children felt the weight of this unrest. They woke often, scared by the dark or the sounds outside. Mothers tried to comfort them, but many knew sleep was hard to come by for everyone. This constant battle against sleepless nights showed how war touches everyone, soldiers and civilians alike. The home front was a quiet war zone of its own, where rest was a rare prize. The war was not only fought on faraway battlefields. At home, civilians faced their own daily battles. Nights were often the hardest. The sounds of bombs falling, air raid sirens wailing, and enemy planes flying overhead made many people afraid to close their eyes. Cities were darkened with blackout curtains. No lights could show, so planes could not find targets. This made the nights darker than usual, but also more frightening. Families lived with worry, hunger, and fear. They waited for news from soldiers far away. They feared the next bomb, or the next attack. These worries filled the minds of mothers, fathers, children, and elders alike. Sleep was hard to find. Many tossed and turned, restless with fear. Some people found comfort in small routines, like reading a book, saying a prayer, or listening to soft music. But even these small comforts were often not enough to calm the storm inside. Children felt the weight of this fear. Many woke during the night. scared by loud noises or the dark. Mothers tried to soothe their children, holding them close, but the fear was hard to hold back. Even adults found it hard to rest. Without enough sleep, people felt more tired, weak, and less able to face the challenges of the day. Work became harder, care for family became harder. The constant worry wore on everyone. The long nights made the war feel endless. Peaceful sleep became a precious gift, but one rarely received. People longed for rest, for quiet moments without fear, but the war left few such moments. The home front was a quiet battleground of its own. The battle was for rest, for calm, for strength to keep going through the dark days ahead, with the weight of fear and sleepless nights pressing down. Many civilians turned to alcohol for comfort. Drinking became a way to ease the mind, to dull the sharp edges of worry. In homes, pubs, and clubs, people found temporary relief in a glass of beer, wine, or stronger spirits. For some, it was a ritual that helped them forget the war for a little while. Alcohol was easy to find, even with rationing. In some places, homebrewed drinks filled the gaps left by shortages. Families shared drinks quietly in the evenings. Soldiers on leave often drank heavily, trying to wash away the horrors they had seen. This surge in alcohol use was both a symptom and a cause of the strain the war put on society, but drinking had a price. While it brought short moments of peace, it also led to problems. Some people drank too much, losing control over their lives. Families sometimes suffered because of fights or neglect caused by heavy drinking. Medical officers began to notice that alcohol was becoming a new kind of battlefield one fought inside, homes and hearts rather than on distant fields. Despite this, alcohol remained one of the few comforts many could reach for in desperate times. It was a quiet escape, a way to soften the hard edges of a harsh reality. For many, it was the only way to find sleep, if only for a few hours, under the shadow of war. Asterisk, as the night stretched long and tense, many civilians searched for more ways to find rest. Over-the-counter sleeping aids became a quiet refuge for those struggling with restless minds. These powders, pills, and mixtures promised calm and sleep without a prescription, making them easily available in pharmacies and stores. People turned to these remedies when the bombs fell, or when worry would not let them rest. The pills helped soften the racing thoughts and ease the tension that built up during the long days. Mothers, fathers, and even children sometimes took these gentle medicines to find a brief peace from fear. Among the most common were barbiturates, mild sedatives that slowed the mind just enough to bring on sleep. These drugs were not as strong as morphine or other hospital medicines, but were effective enough for many. Bromides, calming powders made from minerals, were also popular, especially before stronger drugs became widely used. But the ease of access came with risks. Some people began to rely on these aids too much, taking pills night after night to chase away anxiety and insomnia. The early warnings from doctors about dependence were often ignored in the rush for relief. Still, for many, these sleeping aids were a small comfort in a time when quiet moments were rare. These simple medicines helped millions get through nights filled with fear, uncertainty, and loss. They were silent companions, softening the harsh edges of war, one pill at a time. The war was hard on everyone, but especially on children. Their worlds were filled with loud noises, darkness from blackout curtains, and days of uncertainty. Many children could not understand why their homes shook or why their parents looked so tired and worried. Sleep became a fragile thing for them often. Broken by nightmares or fear, families tried their best to protect the young ones, but the trauma ran deep. Some children began to show signs of what we now call post-traumatic stress, even if no one had a name for it then. They might wake suddenly, cry without reason, or cling tightly to parents in the dark. To help these children find some peace, parents sometimes turned to quiet escapes. This could mean gentle rocking, soft lullabies, or stories told in whispering, voices to soothe the mind. In some cases, doctors recommended mild sleeping aids for older children, hoping to ease restless nights. Yet, not every family had access to these comforts. Many children grew up in shelters, crowded apartments, or bombed-out neighborhoods, where quiet moments were rare. Their escape came in small, simple ways, like a warm blanket, a favorite toy, or the steady presence of a caring adult. Despite the hardships, children found ways to survive. Their resilience was quiet but strong. The war shaped them deeply, but even in darkness, they found light through moments of calm, love, and gentle care. As the war dragged on, shortages became common. Medicines and drugs that were once easy to get grew scarce. Governments prioritized soldiers and key workers, leaving civilians with fewer resources. This scarcity pushed many to seek alternatives wherever they could find them. Black markets began to grow in cities across both Axis and Allied nations. These markets sold all sorts of goods, food, clothing, and especially drugs. Sleeping pills, painkillers, and stimulants were among the most sought-after items. For many civilians, these drugs offered a chance to ease stress, quiet restless nights, or dull the sharp edges of daily fear. The black market was risky. Prices were high and quality was not always guaranteed. Some drugs were fake or dangerous. Still, desperation made people take chances. For those struggling with insomnia or anxiety, a pill bought secretly could mean a few hours of rest or a brief escape from harsh realities. In some places, people even stole medicines from hospitals, pharmacies, or military supplies. This theft reflected how deep the need was, and how little support was sometimes available to those at home. Authorities tried to control these markets, but the chaos of war made it difficult. Black market drugs became part of the hidden story of civilian survival, a quiet battle fought in homes, shelters, and back alleys, far from the front lines. When the war ended, many soldiers returned home carrying more than memories. They carried chemicals in their bodies that once helped them fight or forget pain. Morphine, amphetamines, barbiturates, these were not easy to leave behind. After months or years of use, the body began to crave them. This craving is called dependence. It is a strong need that is hard to ignore. Many veterans found themselves in a quiet battle. The battle was inside their own bodies. Without the drugs, pain, fear, and sleeplessness came back with a force. Some tried to stop on their own, but the struggle was tough. Families watched as their loved ones changed. Some became distant, others struggled with mood swings or health problems. Hospitals started to see a new kind of patient. These were men who needed help, not for war wounds, but for their need for drugs. It was a problem that many had never faced before. Doctors were not sure how to treat it. At first, they thought it was a sign of weakness or lack of willpower. Over time, the view changed to understanding addiction as a medical condition, not a moral failing. In the years following the war, addiction among veterans grew to be a concern. Many soldiers who had been given drugs during combat found themselves unable to stop. The chemicals that had once given them strength now held them captive. This hidden epidemic added a heavy burden on communities and medical systems. The story of post-war dependence is one of quiet suffering. It reminds us that war changes lives in ways we do not always see. The drugs that helped soldiers survive sometimes kept them trapped long after the guns were silent. After the war, many veterans faced deep sadness that would not go away. This sadness is called depression. It was often linked with the memories of battle, loss of friends, and the pain of returning to a world that had moved on. For some, the heavy weight of these feelings was too much. Many veterans struggled in silence. Talking about their feelings was hard, as society expected strength and courage. This made it difficult to ask for help or share their pain. The loneliness only grew deeper. Some veterans turned to drugs or alcohol to try to quiet their minds. But these were only temporary escapes. The trauma from war, what we now call PTSD, was not well understood at the time. Instead of healing, many felt trapped in a cycle of sadness and addiction. The sadness sometimes led to thoughts of suicide. Sadly, many veterans took their own lives. The loss was a silent tragedy felt in homes, neighborhoods, and communities across the world. The war's scars were not only on the battlefield, but also in the hearts of those who fought. Families and friends watched helplessly as their loved ones struggled. The pain was invisible to many. It was only years later that doctors and scientists began to recognize the lasting impact of trauma and the need for mental health care. The war left behind more than broken bodies. It left broken spirits in need of care and understanding. The stories of those who suffered quietly remind us of the cost of war beyond the fighting. After the war ended, many veterans returned home with wounds that could be seen, but also wounds that could not. These invisible wounds, like trauma and addiction, were not fully understood by doctors or governments. Medical systems were not prepared for the long road ahead. Hospitals and clinics focused mostly on physical injuries. They had tools and knowledge to treat broken bones, wounds, and infections. But mental health was less clear. Many doctors did not recognize conditions like shell shock or what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. This slow understanding left many veterans without proper help. Some were sent home with little support. Others were placed in hospitals meant for physical care but lacked mental health specialists. The stigma around mental illness made it harder for veterans to seek help or be believed. Addiction to painkillers or stimulants given during the war was often ignored or misunderstood. Veterans were sometimes labeled as weak or blamed for their struggles. The medical community took time to develop new approaches to mental health care. It was only in the 1950s and later that better treatments began to emerge. New research, therapy, techniques, and support groups slowly improved care. But for many years after the war, the help came too late or not at all. The slow response of medical systems added to the suffering. Many veterans and their families had to face challenges alone. Their experiences pushed the world to rethink how it cares for those who have seen war. Veteran hospitals became crucial places in the years after World War II. These hospitals were built to care specifically for those who had served in the military. They focused not only on physical healing, but also on the complex challenges veterans faced after war. Many soldiers came back with injuries that needed long-term care. Veteran hospitals provided surgeries, rehabilitation, and prosthetics, but they also became places where mental health care slowly grew. Doctors and nurses learned more about how war affected the mind on these hospitals. Veterans could receive treatments for addiction to drugs like morphine or amphetamines. Though the knowledge was limited, these hospitals tried to offer support and comfort. Some had special wards for psychological care. These hospitals were often crowded with more patients than staff. Resources were stretched thin. Still, they represented hope for many veterans. They offered a safe space where veterans were understood by others who had shared similar experiences. Veteran hospitals also helped families. They provided information, counseling, and sometimes shelter. Many veterans needed help adjusting to civilian life after years of fighting. Though imperfect, veteran hospitals were an important step toward recognizing the lasting impact of war. They marked a growing awareness that healing after battle was about more than just fixing the body. It was about caring for the whole person, mind and spirit. After World War II, doctors and scientists began to pay more attention to addiction as a serious medical issue. Before the war, addiction was often misunderstood or ignored. But the widespread use of drugs like morphine, amphetamines, and sedatives during the war forced experts to face the reality of dependence. Many veterans returned home struggling with addiction. Some tried to hide their use, while others openly sought help. This created a new challenge for medical systems, which were not yet equipped to treat addiction effectively. Research into addiction started to grow during this time. Scientists studied how certain drugs affected the brain and body. They learned that addiction was more than just a lack of willpower. It was a complex condition involving physical changes and mental health. Hospitals began to set up programs to help those addicted to painkillers or stimulants. These programs often combined medical treatment with counseling and support groups. It was the start of modern addiction medicine. This new understanding also changed how doctors prescribed drugs. They became more cautious about giving out substances with addictive potential. Governments and health organizations worked on policies to control drug use and protect patients. The war had shown how drugs could both save lives and create new problems. The experience led to a slow but important shift in how society viewed addiction, from a moral failing to a medical condition needing care and compassion. This change paved the way for future research and better treatments, helping millions in the decades after the war. Even after World War II, the use of stimulants in military settings did not end. In fact, the lessons learned about amphetamines and other drugs shaped how future wars were fought. Soldiers in later conflicts like Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan were sometimes given stimulants to help them stay alert during long missions. Military doctors continued to study how these drugs affected focus, energy, and fatigue. They learned more about both the benefits and the risks. Stimulants could keep soldiers awake through exhausting nights or dangerous patrols, but they could also cause side effects like anxiety, addiction, or crashes of exhaustion when the effects wore off. Modern armed forces have developed strict rules about when and how stimulants can be used. The goal is to balance helping soldiers perform with protecting their health. Medical teams watch carefully for signs of overuse or dependency. Technology has also changed this story. Newer drugs have been developed that aim to boost alertness, with fewer side effects. But the basic idea remains. Soldiers sometimes need help to stay sharp during long or intense operations. The ongoing use of stimulants shows how the experiences of World War II shaped military medicine for decades to come. The war's hidden pharmacy continues to influence the modern battlefield in ways many do not see. After World War II, The widespread use of drugs like amphetamines and morphine raised important questions about the role of medicine in war. Military leaders and doctors had to rethink how to balance mission success with soldier well-being. New policies emerged to regulate drug use in armed forces. Medical ethics became more central in decisions about giving soldiers performance enhancers or painkillers. The goal was to protect soldiers from harm while supporting their duty. Rules were set to control dosages, monitor side effects, and prevent addiction. Commanders learned that pushing troops too hard with drugs could backfire if soldiers became dependent or suffered long-term damage. Ethical debates also arose about consent. Soldiers were often given drugs without full knowledge of risks or alternatives. Over time, militaries began emphasizing informed consent and the right to refuse medication when possible. These policy shifts reflected a growing awareness that treating soldiers as whole people was vital. Medicine in war could no longer just focus on immediate performance, but also on long-term health and recovery. The lessons from World War II shaped military medical ethics for future conflicts. Today, armed forces face ongoing challenges balancing the pressures of war with care for those who fight it. The lessons learned from World War II about drug use in war zones still resonate today. In conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan, soldiers continue to rely on medications to help manage pain, stress, and exhaustion. Amphetamines, though now more regulated, have modern equivalents used carefully to boost alertness during long missions. Painkillers such as morphine have been replaced or supplemented with newer drugs like fentanyl patches, which help wounded soldiers in the field. Mental health treatments have also evolved. Unlike in World War II, there is more recognition of post-traumatic stress disorder. Medications such as antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs are now part of military mental health care to help soldiers cope with the psychological effects of combat. Still, challenges remain. The fast pace and high stress of modern warfare means some soldiers may turn to drugs outside official channels, risking addiction and side effects. Commanders and medical teams work to prevent this while supporting operational needs. The experience of past wars guides today's approach to balancing drug use, soldier health, and mission success. Medical ethics remain a priority, ensuring soldiers receive care that respects their dignity and long-term well-being. Asterisk. War has always had a hidden side, the medicines and drugs quietly shaping outcomes behind the scenes. In modern conflicts, this unseen pharmacy is more complex than ever. Soldiers carry medical kits filled with painkillers, antibiotics, and stimulants. These medicines help keep them going through intense missions and harsh conditions. Advances in pharmaceuticals mean faster healing and better control over symptoms than ever before. But beyond what soldiers carry, entire supply chains deliver drugs to field hospitals, bases, and ships. Military doctors monitor doses carefully to balance effectiveness. With safety, they face the challenge of preventing addiction while providing needed relief. New drugs also help with mental health. Sleep aids, anti-anxiety medications, and antidepressants are part of the unseen arsenal. These can ease the psychological toll of combat, reducing the impact of trauma. This quiet war within the war is vital. The unseen pharmacy helps maintain strength, focus, and morale. It shapes how modern soldiers survive and perform, often without recognition or public notice. Asterisk. As the dust of battle slowly settles, we look back at how far medicine has come since World War II. The war's harsh lessons shaped new ways to treat pain, fatigue, and trauma. Today's soldiers benefit from those early experiments, though challenges remain. The use of stimulants, painkillers, and sedatives in war zones has grown more careful, with better understanding of risks and long-term effects. Post-traumatic stress is recognized widely, with treatments that were once unthinkable now becoming standard care. Yet the scars of war, both seen and hidden, persist. Pain, addiction, and mental wounds remind us that healing is a long road. Medical ethics continue to evolve, balancing the needs of soldiers with their well-being. Reflecting quietly, we see war's pharmacy as a symbol of human resilience and fragility. It reveals how progress often grows from pain. It reminds us that peace, though fragile, is the true goal, where no medicine is needed to numb the wounds of conflict. In this soft ending, we honor those who served and suffered, those who cared. For them, and those still healing, their stories echo in every pill, every injection, every quiet night when sleep finally returns.